It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
The lunatics in Liverpool have just arrested the leader of the Liverpool old age pensioners, Audreywhite, 76, a battling grandmother. If these Labour people knew anything about Labour history, I'd mention Bessiebraddock to them. But they've never heard of her. Well, Audreywhite is the new Bessiebraddock with very much better politics. You're going to regret this particular huckle, PC, knucklehead, and people are literally dying on camera in Gaza. Literally, as you watch them, dying of starvation on camera in Gaza in 2025. And the ghost of Jeffrey Epstein ain't half haunting Donald Trump. Mind you, that Barack Obama's in a bit of bother. You better believe it. It's all coming up here on the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
You know, the British ruling class used to have a bit of finesse. They used to know that the tall tree has to bend with the wind, else it would break. The British ruling class, once upon a time, had at least a passing acquaintance or resemblance with James Bond. Now they're Mr. Bean. Now they are Austin Powers. How could it be otherwise on this anniversary of Thunderbirds, where we have a clanking, robotic, soulless, heartless, and it would appear brainless Prime Minister, Home Secretary, and government? They have now arrested hundreds of people, including an 83-year-old woman priest, an Anglican priest, wearing her dog collar. They have arrested headmasters of prestigious schools. They have arrested old people young people, men, women, for the crime of speaking, or rather for the crime of holding a piece of cardboard, in one case with a cartoon from the satirical magazine Private Eye, read by every single one of the idiots who wrote the law that transformed a group of mischief makers. You, depending on your point of view, could call them malicious mischief makers. The kind of people who lock themselves to railings, you know, like the suffragettes. Remember them? Yvette Cooper, the women that won you the vote, the right to sit in Parliament, and now be the Home Secretary in a Labour government. Remember them? You were wearing their rosette and their slash, flash, whatever it is you call it, just the other day. You idiots have called malicious mischief makers terrorists. The kind of people who go in for peaceful, civil disobedience. You have called them terrorists. Well, the British people are now showing that up with this they will not put. And they are ready to be arrested in their tens at first, then their scores, now in their hundreds, soon in their thousands, then in their tens of thousands. What are you going to do then? There aren't enough jail cells. There aren't enough police officers. There aren't enough court officials. What are you going to do when tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people have committed the offence for which you arrested 76-year-old pensioners leader Audreywhite in Liverpool? You'd need to know Liverpool. You'd need to know Audreywhite. Maybe you'd need to know the historic Labour figure of Bessiebraddock, with her arms folded, Les Dawson-like. In the case of Bessie, with a turban. Audreywhite has rather more style and panache, as befits someone who actually made Labour history back in the 1960s and was played by the late and great Glenda Jackson in the Hollywood movie of The Affair. She's 76 now, but she still wears that red lipstick, and she's still a battling fighter for good cause. A battling fighter for the pensioners as before the workers, and a battling fighter for the Palestinian people in Gaza. You've arrested her. What are you going to do with her? You're going to put her in court? You think a jury in Liverpool is going to convict Audreywhite? Are you crazy? You think a judge is going to send her to prison? Did you people not even think this through? I never went to university. I left school at 16. I could have told you every single thing that has happened would happen. But then you don't listen to anybody except the Israeli embassy in London that encouraged you to do this. You are entirely beholden to the Israeli embassy in London, representing a man in Tel Aviv, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's just gone sick with food poisoning. Pray for the bacteria, won't you? The Israeli government is now responsible, televised, Hollywood style, in Technicolor, if that's still a thing, to everybody in the whole world. An actual Holocaust. We've all seen it. We are all watching it, although it's getting worse and worse. We have become, I'm sorry to say, familiar with the slaughter of the innocent children. But today I saw an old man literally die on camera as he got to the front of the queue of the feeding station without being murdered whilst he stood in the queue like 50 or more others today and virtually every day. He expired on camera from starvation in 2025. Millions of people have watched a tweet that I put out, 3.5 million and counting, of a woman whom my director said to me, the old woman. No, she's not an old woman. She's a young woman. But she looks like a woman in Auschwitz or Birkenau or Belsen. She looks like what we used to call a Belsen horror. She's so starved, emaciated, that this video is 5 days old. She's probably dead now too. She hadn't eaten for 5 days. She complained she was feeling dizzy. I don't know if she has children. I don't know if she's been giving up any possibility of food so that her children might eat. Or maybe they have starved to death too. 80 people today in Gaza died of hunger. How more strongly do I have to put that? Just minutes away from where that old man, in fact, not even 2 minutes away from where that old man starved to death, that you've just seen die, there's a gate. And beyond that locked gate are hundreds of thousands of tons of food and water and medicine, which Israel is refusing to allow through the gate. Shame on them, curse on them, yes. But the bigger shame, and my, at least, bigger curse, is on the rest of the world who is allowing this shitty little country, as the French president once called it, of just 8 million people, starve millions to death, whilst locking out the food, water and medicine that would keep them alive. The shame is on you, Keir Starmer, Donald Trump, Joe Biden before you, Emmanuel Macron, Merz, Meloni, all of you. The shame is on you. Actually, let me go further. The shame is on China and Russia too. It's on the whole world, all the governments of the world. You wouldn't even have to smash that gate down. You could push it down with your finger and say, we are coming in because there is a biblical famine in occupied territory, illegally occupied territory. There is a biblical famine taking place on the other side of this door, and we cannot be responsible for allowing it to happen. That would be like knowing what was happening in Auschwitz and being in a position to bring it to a halt, but refusing to do so because the gangster regime responsible for it will call you an anti-Semite if you raise your voice, raise your hand against it. So for me, of course, that poisonous runt Netanyahu is the man responsible for the mass killing of men, women, and children, hundreds of thousands of them. But the bigger criminals are the people who are allowing him to do it when it is in their power immediately to end it. I'm sorry if I sound angry. I am beyond myself with anger at the situation in Gaza today. And Mr. Churchill used to write, he was the first man ever to use post-it notes. He used to write on folders, files, binders, action this day. If these Western governments don't take action this day, that woman will be dead, just like that man is dead. And all the other men, women, and children who are starving to death right now. Never mind the shot and shell and rockets and bombs. Never mind the hundreds of thousands who've been murdered and maimed and set on fire. Never mind that. The millions that are literally starving to death in front of your eyes. And you are doing nothing about it. I don't know if there's much more I can say about that. I'm saying and doing everything that I can, but clearly it is not enough. And therefore, the people that you've classed as terrorists and who are going to have spent 18 months in prison before they even get to trial. Yes, the process is the punishment. You know why? Because they know that there is no jury is going to convict them. So they drag it out so that the people have already untried spent a year and a half in prison before they're acquitted by yet another 12 good men and women and true, their peers in a jury in front of the courts. Everybody that's been arrested is going to be cleared by a jury. And therefore, you better start building new prisons, Keir Starmer, because you are in for an explosion in the number of people you're going to have to arrest and lock up. The ghost of Jeffrey Epstein continues to haunt Donald Trump, who vaingloriously, as always, today claimed that since the Epstein hoax, his polling numbers have gone up. Now, I don't normally go hunting for statistics. Quite often, statistics bore me to death. But I know the direction of travel. I know which way forward, and I know which way back. I know which way up, and I know which way down. And I know, Donald Trump, that you are lying. Today, I did dig into the statistics. Donald Trump's presidential approval rating has fallen like a stone since he attempted to carry out a magic trick that is so clearly beyond him. I'm amazed that nobody advised him. He's apparently taking political advice from Melania nowadays. Why didn't she tell him that after all these years of ranting and raving about how you were going to drain the swamp, Donald, after all these years in which you said you were going to expose these criminals in this sex and espionage network built around the Israeli intelligence asset, Jeffrey Epstein, you're going to try and persuade the American public and the public of the world that it was all a hoax, that this guy Jeffrey Epstein didn't actually really exist in truth. And moreover, that he hanged himself to death in the only 1 minute when there was no camera on in his cell, although it turned out to be 2 minutes and 53 seconds. In that small window, he's going to successfully hang himself with paper sheets. You're going to try that trick, Donald? That old suicide by paper sheets trick? You're not going to pull it off. And so he has not. The fact that he is now off down another rabbit hole, which is a legitimate rabbit hole down which lie some real rodents, some real vermin. Barack Obama and his sect carried out an attempted coup d'etat against the American Republic. That much is true. That's no hoax. They knew because their intelligence community told them in writing that Russia did not hack the Democratic National Committee. If this is familiar to you, that's because you've been watching me for a long time. I told you year after year, there was no hack. It was a leak. Russia did not hack the DNC. Russia did not interfere in the American presidential election in 2016. Russia did not install Donald Trump as America's president. They knew it, but they took the risk of World War III by destabilizing Donald Trump's first administration to the extent that he became a paralyzed president, having to deal with the entirely false allegation that he was only there because Putin fixed it for him to be there. It was all a black lie. And now, thanks to Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, all the papers have been revealed and the case has been referred to the Department of Justice. Donald Trump, if your officials have any guts at all, you'll lock them up. Lock them up. Drain that swamp. And while you're at it, lock up all those responsible for the many crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. This is the mother of all talk shows. Right after this, Monologue is one of the best guests you could possibly expect. Afshin Rattansi, host of Going Underground, coming up right now. Stay tuned. He's a schoolyard bully, Piers Morgan. And he does have a big show, but then he has a big and plush and very well appointed studio. And he has a big and very well paid staff. He has a very big budget. He's an extremely wealthy man. And the combination of all of that does give you a certain head start. We, on the other hand, are a mom and pop business. There's just me and Gayatri. And the people who told me the phones are melting are my own grandchildren who are answering the phones for nothing. This is an unpaid gig I'm doing and do twice a week. Nobody pays me one brass farthing to make this show, to present this show. I'm not sure that Piers Morgan would tell you how much he makes.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
So tonight's poll, will the Epstein affair bring down Trump, yes or no? 30,000 people have voted already. You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. If you're watching the show on the YouTube stream, make sure you have subscribed to my channel, please, and give the program your thumbs up and share with all your friends that we are broadcasting live at the very highest level. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada. The number is +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 08081 965522. And the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Afshin Rattansi is a very close friend of mine and a valued colleague. He is an authority on international politics, as any of you who've watched this show Going Underground already know, and if you haven't yet watched it, catch up soon. Afshin Rattansi joins us now. Afshin, the number of subject areas that we could cover is so great it would take the whole show and more. But let's start with the situation in Gaza, if we may. I don't know about you, but for me, the situation has exponentially stepped up a level. The attrition of all these people over all this time, coming up for 2 years now, is one thing. But when people start falling down in the street dead from hunger, it's hard to see how this can be sustained, explained. It's hard to see how this can be allowed to continue. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, on Monday's Going Underground, we actually talked to a former Israeli intelligence agent, and he kind of smiles with the word genocide. I mean, I hope audreywhite, the Merseyside Pensioners Association person you referred to earlier in that amazing monologue, so befitting of today, which is the 100th birthday of Frantz Fanon, the great Martinique political philosopher who wrote Ritter to the Earth. It's not only the extermination of these 2 million people, it is the way anyone trying to show solidarity with those people are treated. I'm wearing a Bob Dylan T-shirt here. You can see it seems that, especially speaking to you in England right now, there's something we can't even talk about right now because we'd face 14 years in prison for talking about a non-violent protest group. So it's incredibly difficult in these NATO countries that are arming Israel. I know that every day Keir Starmer sends those flights to aid the genocide. But ironically, Mike Huckabee is a bit of a hero today, would you believe? When NATO countries are not destroying churches in Ukraine and persecuting Christians, and of course, one should say there's an 83-year-old Christian who was arrested in Parliament Square for talking about that non-violent protest group, considered a terrorist group. Mike Huckabee, Trump's ambassador to Israel, it appears, has suddenly understood, and he's a great believer in end times, that Israel are persecuting Christians, and he is suggesting that potential reciprocal visa restrictions for Israeli citizens seeking to enter the United States. Because suddenly, even Mike Huckabee realizes how Christians are spat on by these Israeli Zionists. And of course, symbolic of this week of the execution food camps, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation execution centers, was that picture of the only Catholic church in Gaza being destroyed, lethal attack, killing two. Words fail us, but we must continually not be somehow desensitized by the violence that, thanks to Elon Musk, we can see on X and other non-censored platforms that we can see.
Quite so. If we run out of words, the world is doomed. A lot of people rely on us for our words, and so we shan't run out of words. But I've certainly run out of patience for the governments of the West and of the East, and I'm sensitive to where you are as you are to where I am. But the fact that the entire world is being held hostage, to coin a phrase, by a country of 7 million people the world could feed all of these people overnight, although many of them now are beyond saving. They're in what's called the 5th stage of malnutrition. And even if food did become available, it would not save their lives. But the world could open that gate and flood the place with food and medicine and water. They just won't. Why?
These are genocidal countries in any case, one could say. Look at the way 1 million Ukrainians have been sacrificed in the proxy war on Russia. They don't care. You mentioned earlier that Colonel Tulsi Gabbard is now finally, gosh, they take a long time, the Trump administration. Well, after 6 months. Obama's been running around for 6 months. When is Obama going to be arrested, the butcher of Libya, for trying to overthrow the American government? But, you know, this is the kind of genocidal scale they are. It's ironic, isn't it? Obama is going to get finally go behind bars, perhaps, for trying to overthrow the democracy in the United States, when, of course, in any normal world, he would be destroyed for the crime of Libya. But if they could do that to Libya, if they could do it to Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, the numbers, it just goes on, doesn't it? Of course, they can kill 2 million Palestinians. And of course, this is the worst. This is the Holocaust now.
It truly is. The deputy spokesman of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs just a couple of hours ago attacked me, calling me the Goebbels of this age. But of course, the Goebbels is them. What they're doing, the only difference between it and the Holocaust of the 1940s is that this one is on our phones. We can watch it. And another key difference is that we could end it like that if we decided to, whereas we had to fight our way, and particularly...
It's not that we can end it. It's they are participating in it, and the only reason Netanyahu can do this is because of the co-belligerents of the European Union, Britain, and the United States, isn't it? So I think the mindset has to change. That's why it's kind of pertinent that it's Frantz Fanon's 100th birthday. That's what they want to happen. And the media over there, I mean, you know, I have to say, a lot is said about GCC countries not saying what they should. But, you know, MBS, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who clearly, when he speaks, you get a lot of anti-Saudi press in Britain when he says anything independent, has called it out as a genocide. While all the mad commentators and so-called journalists, actual stenographers in NATO countries talk about the idea of an Abraham Accord. There are condemnations by GCC countries of this. Of course, militarily, it is very difficult and sensitive. But the fact is, it is these European powers that are actively engaged. So they, I suppose, are making themselves future targets, because when all this is done, no one will ever forget what Britain's role was in the genocide, or the United States. But as I say, Trump is so quixotic, he may this week say a few things. But of course, he's been giving more aid than in 6 months than Genocide Joe did. Genocide Joe Biden and Holocaust Harris did.
That's a fact, yeah. Absolutely correct. Let me segue, because I don't have you all night, to what I used to call the big enchilada, but all these enchiladas are getting quite large, the NATO war against Russia. Trump has given Russia an ultimatum. How he feels he's in a position to give ultimata to Russia is, of course, itself another and maybe psychological question. But the war isn't going to stop. What might be going to stop, though, is the presidency of Volodymyr Zelensky. Suddenly, on one weekend, all the top people's papers, the Financial Times, the Spectator, and others, have basically called time on Zelensky. How are you reading all this?
Yeah, it's amazing how this totalitarian NATO country, Britain, just on key changes its tune. But Cy Hirsch, friend of mine, great journalist, has already said Zelensky will be the new president, dictator, martial dictator of fascist Ukraine. I should say, because I know we want to talk about the proxy war, but the Epstein affair is related here, because Cy Hirsch was a man who was the guy who interviewed Ari Ben Menashe. And my interview with him on Going Underground is spotted. You can see it on social media. It was 5 years ago I interviewed him. And it was Ari Ben Menashe who was the source for Cy Hirsch and the Samson option and about Israel's nuclear weapons. And I know you in Parliament spoke up afterwards about that. He also, Ari Ben Menashe, exposed that it was the Israeli embassy in London that was contacted by Robert Maxwell to entrap Mordecai Vanunu, the man we are grateful to for revealing the nuclear weapons of Israel. Israel, of course, completely with Ukraine in this current war. Anyway, Ari Ben Menashe is the guy who said, and he's been right so many times before, Iran-Contra, he leaked to Time magazine. Time magazine suppressed it. It was his revelations that kicked off the Iran-Contra scandal coming out. And it was he who said that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. So there is a relation there between all of that. As to what Trump was doing as regards to 50 days and the timeline, perhaps he was doing it to just please John Ratcliffe at the CIA and Marco Rubio. It obviously makes no difference. Russia kind of shrugged it off. I noticed Italy and a few other countries said we're not going to be buying the American weapons that Trump wants us to buy to use against Russia. Britain, our country, of course, though, first in there. Britain must be rolling in money for its pensioners. It's sick. It's elderly because I think, what is it, 100 years he's going to, Starmer has announced all that money for it. More American weaponry.
Years. Yeah.
I think Russia has to make a decision as to whether it now targets the countries that are sourcing, that are the source of the weapons, that are the source for Kiev. And I should just add, there is no freedom of speech in Britain. I know that because Steve Sweeney, a Lebanon correspondent, went to visit his child in London and was detained and asked about his views on the Ukraine war. That's what happens at airports in Britain. You get asked about your views on the subject you just asked me about by police.
Unbelievable. Under the Terrorism Act, just like Kit Clarenberg, just like Craig Murray, just like Richard Medhurst. This country is in a very, very steep nosedive. But I take your point. Maybe the 50 days wasn't meant to add up to much. The problem is the 50 days is already counting down. And what is Trump going to do? Is he really going to sanction the world 100% tariffs on anyone who has any trading relationship with Russia? That's a recipe for economic World War III, isn't it?
Well, he keeps talking about how he loves the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. How's he going to put sanctions on the UAE and Saudi Arabia for their trade with Russia? Clearly, it is a nonsense. He's not going to go as far as the ridiculous golf partner, Senator Lindsey Graham, who seemed to threaten Russia the way that Iran was threatened. But certainly after the attacks on Iran, about 100 miles away from that window behind me, no one trusts the United States for any negotiation. And Trump has made countries all around the world realize the necessity to have nuclear weapons against the ideas of Ayatollah Khomeini theologically in Iran. And all week, Russia and China have been sending cargo planes to Tehran. I can't imagine that Putin would trust any American negotiation in Istanbul. So I suppose, and we all hope this will happen, there will be a summit of some kind between Trump and Putin, either before the 50-day are over or after. Of course, on his plate at the moment, though, is the MAGA base clamoring for news about Jeffrey Epstein, about which the whole Gaza genocide may then become an issue, because never in our lifetimes, George, have we witnessed Republicans on the scale, the scale it is, talking about now is the time to end not only the support for Israel. The United States can't feed its own population. So many tens of millions can't eat without federal aid. Stop the aid to Israel. And of course, they've already it looks like, cut any funding for the proxy war in Russia through Ukraine.
Well, I mean, how do you account for the state capture which the Epstein affair crystallizes? I mean, it's hard to conclude otherwise than that Epstein was collecting all this compromat, and we know that he was because we saw the news coverage of the raid on his Manhattan townhouse. We saw the FBI carrying out all the tapes, all the videotapes and hard drives. He had a camera in every single room. That must account for a substantial part of the state capture of the United States by the Israel lobby, mustn't it?
We don't like conspiracies, do we, George? We like and understand things in the round, structured, often between class conflict. These are the engines of history. But in this case, and we know that if Obama, after all, with the connivance of the entire totalitarian so-called free press in the United States was trying to overthrow the government, and if Robert Maxwell, who stole all the Mirror pensioners' money, was killed by Mossad after being a Mossad agent, it's clear that in NATO countries no free press exists, and that these things can be hidden even when they're on a scale so bizarre that I think Tucker Carlson gasps every time he says it, doesn't it? The fact that Jeffrey Epstein had the largest townhouse in Manhattan and was and no one knew where the money came from. Tomorrow's the death day of Alexander Cockburn, one of my mentors. This is the golden age is in us. Alexander Cockburn, who founded Counterpunch, which sadly went awry over the Syria civil war. I wish he was alive because, we don't really analyze things in these terms. That he really was. I think when I did that interview with the Israeli Mossad agent, Ari Ben Menashe, I didn't fully appreciate it. How is it possible that the United States' foreign policy, the genocide in Gaza, can all be tied up with a man trafficking young girls, rather as the Canadians did for ISIS in Syria, it should be added, trafficking young girls and then blackmailing oligarchs in this way? But we're never going to hear it from Mossad, are we, directly? And do you think Trump wants to say it out loud?
Well, the Cockburn family produced many fine sons and daughters, but their father was greater than all of them. The great Claude Cockburn, whose writings deserve everyone's attention. Amongst many bon mots that he produced was this one. Nothing is true until it's been officially denied. It's been marvelous. Afshin Rattansi talking with you again. I hope it's not long delayed when we can sip a non-alcoholic martini together again. Wonderful seeing you. Afshin Rattansi, host of Going Underground, a must-watch for everyone. Let me take a quick break. Your calls are coming up next. Stay tuned. There's a legend on the line in Oklahoma. It's May on Trump. Welcome back, May.
Trump is using a magic 8-ball to make his decisions. He apparently has completely lost whatever mind he had to begin with. This is just ridiculous. Does he really think anyone's going to believe that? I'm here to say, and I'm here to join you and everybody else, the emperor has no clothes on. He's as naked as they come. And unfortunately, I'm pretty sure he got naked with some young people. And that is why he so desperately is trying to kill this whole Epstein thing. And he's just making it worse.
I'm wondering when Donald Trump knew that he was implicated in these Epstein files and what it was that he knew. That's the big question, because he wouldn't have been banging the Epstein drum all this time and then suddenly to pull the rug. That tells me that it was a late decision, that someone came late to Trump to say, you know, you really don't want to be doing that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Wow, 32,000 people have voted on this poll, and I don't think we've ever had a narrower gap between yes and no. On Telegram, 54% of you think the Epstein affair will bring down Trump. On X, though, only 45%. On YouTube community poll, 55 say yes. On the YouTube stream, 58 say yes. So it is almost 50-50. So if you have a view on it, you better get your vote in. Will the Epstein affair bring down Trump? Yes or no? You can vote on Telegram, on X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Lance is in Canada on Bannon and Epstein. Can't wait to hear Lance's point of view. He's always puncturing the pompous. Go ahead, Lance.
Well, I don't believe that Bannon is directly involved with the Epstein thing. But what I would say is that my thought goes back to when Trump first took office, and Bannon said one of the most important parts of their plan is that they have 3 distractions a day to throw people and the media off of what they're doing. And I don't think they really care what the distractions are. It could be calling a foreign leader a name. It could be whatever. But at this point, the Epstein memo comes out when they need the biggest possible distraction that they can have, because it's fairly obvious they're using ICE to go after and chase labor away from valuable smaller farmers that the private equity probably wants in America. So there's a distraction there. There's a distraction from trying to turn America into more of a police state. There's the absolute brutality. We are at the most brutal phase of Gaza. We're at the most brutal phase maybe that the West Bank has ever been in. And I would say Syria is at one of the most brutal phases ever. And we also need to continue the well, I don't want to, but somebody needs to continue the demonization of Iran. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the biggest distraction there could possibly be, Trump, pictures going around about Trump and Epstein and yada, yada. And the reality is, no, Senate's not going to impeach him for it, and probably nothing will happen. It will just be lots of noise. And if Trump does have impeachment hearings, then there's another distraction, and that's just the plan. Distract, divide, and steal. I mean, that's basically what I see it as.
You and I often disagree, and we're going to disagree again now. As I've said to you before, I think you do them far too much credit. You think they are far more clever than they actually are. You always think there's a plan. But in my experience in politics, and I was a member of the British Parliament across 5 decades, from the 1980s until last year, they never have a plan. They stumble and fall from one crisis to the next. They are completely bereft of any kind of plan or ability to execute any plan that they might have. The one I talked about right at the beginning of my monologue. Nobody who had a plan would designate a mischief-making civil disobedience group who've never harmed a lamb, never killed a mouse, never done anything that could remotely be described as violence, designating them as a terrorist organization, and then having to arrest tens of thousands, as I confidently predict it will be, of the most, difficult people to arrest in the country. I mean, before long, they'll be arresting priests and ministers and government ministers and ex-members of parliament and ex-ambassadors, and they're not going to survive. Their law will not survive that. The judges are going to have to set aside all of their time, all of it, to handle the caseload that is going to be produced. I'm telling you, you keep thinking that they're James Bonds. They are very far from James Bonds. They are much more Thunderbirds, and it is Thunderbird's anniversary today. Thanks, Lance, for the disagreement. Now, you can send me comments on the QR code now if you're watching on YouTube. So scan that QR code and send me comments, as Nicholas Hadji has. Netanyahu, the betrayer, the usurper, the hypocrite, the actor, the false leader, the liar, the deceiver. And Amungu Mvondo, forgive me, brother, if I've got that name wrong, once the Arabs themselves are supporting this genocide, it's hard for outsiders to do anything. And Morns Lad says, absolutely brilliant monologue, Gigi. I can't understand how the powers like Russia and China, Pakistan, India, etc., aren't ending this genocide by forcing in aid and protecting it from the IDF. Jack Klugman, great name, says, I was at the DNC protest a year ago in Chicago, yet I feel fully complicit. I can't even watch kids playing in the park without my mind flashing on Gaza. They are destroying all our humanity. And Pew 2727 says the Arab leaders lavish themselves with their billions as they watch their brothers starve to death. Sick, sick Arab world. Nick is in Los Angeles on the American Catholic Pope. How do you think he's doing so far, Nick?
Hi, George, and thanks for taking the call. I don't think he's doing a particularly good job, but I wanted to throw some thoughts back your way so that you could comment. And your opening monologue, I think, fueled much of what drives all of us, as though as fatiguing as it is to be day in and day out witnessing this madness and this genocide.
Sure.
We have to keep speaking the truth. And going back to the Pope, an American Pope, the first American Pope, I don't know about you, but when I watched that as a sort of lifelong Catholic and from a Catholic family from the East End of London that I've mentioned many times before, I heard a collective sigh of disappointment in St. Peter's Square when his name was announced for a brief nanosecond. It was almost like that was a bit of a surprise, and how unfortunate it is because we've missed an opportunity to keep the work of Francis moving the church forward into the 21st century. I'll pull you back with a couple of anecdotal thoughts and trips down memory lane for you. I remember your last time on BBC Question Time when you were surrounded in North London by a bunch of young Zionists, North London Zionists. You had a Catholic woman, a conservative Catholic woman on the panel sitting, I think, to your right.
Yeah.
And you had the journalist from The Guardian, whose name is completely escapes me right now, but was trying to defend the Zionist position and attacking you. We can remember the late John Paul I, who mysteriously died after announcing that he was going to blow open the doors on the Vatican Bank. We can remember Roberto Calvi and the Ambrosio Bank scandal and the Italian banker swimming from Blackfriars Bridge. And today we have a world of complicit people, athletes, entertainers, politicians, who have all bought out because they've been bought and paid for, being paid astronomical sums of money for a sport like that we love, kicking a football around. Remember, George Best would never have made the money they're making today. Bobby Charlton would never have made all of these things. But today they are paid so much, so that the sums of money they earn, entertainers, athletes, politicians, where are they? My overlying message is we need to hold people accountable for their complicity. We need to have a list.
Yeah.
This cannot be kept silent. They need to be named and shamed, whether it's tomorrow or in fight, whenever. But if we don't, this will happen again. And of course, your friend Piers Morgan, we need to name and shame him, because they all have the blood of children on their hands, of women on their hands, and they're driving the world into madness and chaos.
Yeah, they're driving me mad. I'm as mad as hell, as a movie once put it, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Look, you covered a lot of ground there, Nick, and I'm grateful to you for it. You definitely got me down memory lane. The journalist from The Guardian was Jonathan Friedland, and he was a part of the ambush on me on that show. He had foreknowledge of it, of that I'm certain. He was, in that sense, complicit in it, as were the makers of the show, as was, I'm sorry to say, David Dimbleby, the presenter. I'm not sure if it was the last time I was on, Question Time, but if it was, I'm glad to have gone out in style, because I took on 100 Zionists and won. And at one stage I said, you can be the lions, I will be Daniel. Dare to be a Daniel, dare to stand alone, dare to have a purpose, and dare to have it known. And that's all I've tried to do with my life. And if I'm remembered for anything by friends and foe, I hope it will be that I dared to be a Daniel. This current Pope, Leo, was not my choice, not that I had a vote, but he would not have been my choice if I had had one. I shared that nanosecond of disappointment, but I have to follow the leader of the church. He is the Supreme Pontiff, he is the Holy Father, and he has my prayers. I don't think he's done too badly for an American Pope on the situation in Gaza, but he has a hard act to follow, because Pope Francis was so outstanding on the question of Palestine, Gaza, the Holy Family Church, and we pray for the sweet repose of the martyrs there this week. 3 parishioners murdered, the parish priest himself wounded, the priest that used to talk to the Pope every night on the phone was wounded by an Israeli tank shell. Now, everyone's seen the image of the destruction of the church by a tank shell, so not by a bomb dropped from many thousands of feet above, not a missile that misfired, an up-close and personal tank shell. I myself have not the slightest doubt that that shell was aimed at the cross. And the outstanding work done by the Cardinal Pizzaballa and the other Christian leaders, and even Ambassador Huckabee in the Christian communities of the West Bank, the village of Taibe, which I have walked, was walked almost certainly by Jesus himself. And it was set on fire by American Israeli settlers twice. And that this is beginning to impact on the hierarchy in our church and in others is undoubtedly a big loss for Israel. Israel is losing across the board now. Frankly, when you've lost the unequivocal, without qualification support of Mike Huckabee, boy, are you losing. Nick, thanks for that call. Now, have you checked out the MOATS.tv website? If you haven't, go there and become a MOATS donor. I don't know how more strongly I can put it than this. We cannot continue 2 shows a week but for your support. So the support has to grow. It has to get further. We have to get more donors, or we have to get donors giving more. So the top donors this week, and I'm deeply grateful to them, were Philip Murphy, Dom Iben, Benjamin Corman, Dan Lane, and Douglas McFarlane. Thanks to each and every one of you, and an imprecation to each and every one of you to give something, even if it's only $1, £1, or €1. You can do it most easily at moats.tv. Let me take one more call before the break, because it's my compatriot, Gary, in Scotland, on Palestine. Go ahead, Gary.
Hi, George. How are you? I'm calling from Langham in Dumfries and Galloway.
Okay,
basically,
welcome.
George, in my opinion, we're entering the final act of a 70-year plan, which was going to be the exile, murder, or starvation of every Palestinian in the Holy Land. It's been a long-term plan, this. It's beyond horrific. And
have we? Oh, we've lost Gary in... Yeah, I know the little town of Langham in Dumfriesshire very well, and I was enjoying that call. Gary, do try and get back to us. Let me take a slightly premature, 2-second premature break. I'll be right back with... Let's go to our old friend Declan in Dublin, who's online too. Go ahead, Declan.
Right, George. There's a very big protest in the town of Taibeh, the last Christian village on the West Bank. If they lose this, they are finished in the Holy Land. I'd like to take the chance to salute Francesca Albanese, who is the greatest woman, I think, of our generation. And the hope is that there are other Francesca Albaneses out there who will do something, because the Western churches, the Catholic Church especially, and the other main churches are doing absolutely nothing for their co-religionists in the Holy Land, just like they did nothing for them in Syria or in Iraq.
They don't even talk about them, never mind do anything. And all these Christian politicians, and all these Christian leaders, and most of the Christian clergy haven't done or said even jack to come to their aid. They're not Christians, most of these politicians. When they say they're Christians, better count your spoons, or better still, count the burning Christian houses.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Okay. Will the Epstein affair bring down Trump? That's the big question on the poll tonight. It's a massive poll, and it's a very, very narrow contest between those who think it will bring down Trump and those who think it will not. So you can vote on Telegram, t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my X, my Twitter account. You can vote on the YouTube community poll, as a staggering 23,000 people have done. Or you can vote on the YouTube stream, as quite a healthy 6,000 people have done. So make sure you record your point of view. Who knows, it might tip the balance. The next guest is Scott Ritter. He always makes the most important of any and all of our guests, the most important contribution, precisely because he's been there and done that. Precisely because he was a Marine Corps intelligence officer. Precisely because he was in the arms inspection business. Precisely because he was involved in some of the most highly charged geopolitical areas in the world then, in the former Soviet Union, in the post-Saddam Hussein Iraq. He and I were comrades in arms. We both said that the case that had been made for what turned out to be the utter destruction of Iraq and the killing of 1 million of its people and the cascading of fanatic extremism around the world, we both said that this was one of the biggest blunders, one of the biggest crimes of the early 21st century. Little did we know that 25 years nearly on, we'd still having to be talking with each other, almost weekly really, about even bigger blunders, even bigger crimes. But that we must. Scott Ritter, is always a pleasure, Scott, to have you on the show. I'm very grateful for your time. There's so many enchiladas we could choose, but let's start with, if you will, the NATO proxy war against Russia. I was saying to Afshin Rattansi earlier, I don't think Donald Trump's 50-day ultimatum is going to alter the course of Vladimir Putin's presidency much, but I'm beginning to suspect that it's going to alter little Volodymyr Zelensky's. What do you think?
I agree. You know, when he first announced it, I was scratching my head as to why 50 days? I mean, it's a arbitrary number. I don't know if my screen's frozen or not, but I'll keep speaking just in case you can hear me.
Yeah. Your voice is good.
It's an arbitrary number. Okay. It's an arbitrary number, 50 days. It's not linked to anything of significance. And when you put it in the context of the other things that he announced in the context of this, arms deliveries that just aren't happening. I mean, people need to understand the 17 batteries, a full complement, according to the president, they're not flowing. The Swiss found out that the Patriots they ordered that were supposed to arrive in 2026, 2027 aren't arriving. Instead, that production line is being diverted to Germany that then will divert Patriots to Ukraine. But that doesn't change the fact that these systems don't get delivered until 2026, 2027. It's currently 2025. And even though I'm a simple Marine and math isn't my forte, I know that 2026 is a year away. So the weapons deliveries are just a sham, just a pure sham. The sanctions aren't going to happen. I mean, this notion that the president is somehow going to drive fear into the hearts of the Chinese, the Indians, and the Brazilians by threatening sanctions. Brazil already said, if you don't want to trade with us, we won't trade with you. It doesn't matter. China's already said we're doubling down on Russia. And, do you want us to once again pull the plug on rare earth minerals and magnetic materials that will collapse your auto industry? Trump won't do that. And India, if you keep pushing India enough, they are going to slide off the fence on the side that America doesn't want them to slide on, which is BRICS, G20, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So 50 days to do what? Seymour Hersh, a close friend of mine and a man who I deeply respect in terms of his journalism, has come out and said it's to get rid of Volodymyr Zelensky. And this is the only thing that makes sense. The United States understands that Russia and Ukraine are on totally opposite poles here when it comes to sides of the equation, and you can't bring them together. You're not going to bomb Vladimir Putin into submission. I mean, the ridiculous campaign statement that Trump made in 2024 that he told Putin to his face that if you go into Kiev, I will bomb the bovine excrement out of Moscow is a straight up lie. That conversation never took place, nor did the conversation with Xi Jinping. But the bottom line is Putin will not budge, and Trump knows this. The problem is Zelensky, and Zelensky has to go. And there's widespread recognition of this reality. And I think Seymour Hersh's reporting, together with other reporting that's appeared in the British press, strongly suggests that Zelensky's on his way out. And this is this is the only way you move this issue forward. You remove Zelensky. You have to have elections in Ukraine. There has to be a legitimate leader that then can negotiate a deal that will be acceptable to the Russians. I mean, that's the other bottom line is whoever replaces Zelensky has to know that this is a new game and there are new rules. The old rules, the old game no longer apply. But I think that's what these 50 days are for. I think Zelensky's on his way out. And again, I don't mean to be too harsh here, but he can either leave the old-fashioned way, which is on an airplane with a suitcase full of money going to one of the many mansions that he's bought with American taxpayer funds over the course of the past decade, or he can die on a cold slab, shirtless, with a bullet hole in his head. That's just the way it's going to be. There's no happy ending for Zelensky here.
There needs to be more than one suitcase, I think, unless he's got most of it out already. I'm recalling our former puppet in Afghanistan. I've already forgotten his name, but I will never forget the black bin bags brim full of paper currency. So very last decade, isn't it? But the coordination of the I don't know if you've read Robert Louis Stevenson, Treasure Island. The black spot was pressed into the palm. This was a black spot moment. The Spectator and the Financial Times, who don't do anything, never say anything that is not approved by the state and the deep state, they handed Zelensky the black spot this weekend. They said that, guess what, he's an authoritarian. What you and I were accused of being Putin apologists for repeatedly pointing out, they said he's corrupt. Ditto, that he is deeply unpopular. Ditto. Everything we said is now appearing in the world's fanciest newspapers. How does that feel to you?
Well, it won't be the first time this has happened. I would hope it would be the last time, but unfortunately, I have a tendency to call things correctly before the mainstream media catches on, and it usually means that bad policies have ensued that aren't fact-driven. But Zelensky, I did a documentary on him, a two-part documentary back in 2023 called Agent Zelensky, where I detailed the fact that this man isn't a democratically chosen savior of the Ukrainian people, but a hand-picked puppet of MI6, the CIA, Ukrainian oligarchs whose sole job was to do what happened, to get Ukraine to serve as a proxy to the West in a conflict with Russia designed to strategically defeat Russia. And in this way, you can say Zelensky has been a great success in terms of facilitating at least 3 years of this effort. But the fact is, the Russian bear isn't going to roll over and play dead. The Russian bear came out of hibernation and has been eating very well, apparently, and it's a very strong bear right now, and it's on the prowl. And nobody's going to be able to put it back into its den. And so Zelensky's time is up. They now have to bring in another figurehead whose job is to facilitate the surrender of Ukraine. And that's what we're talking about here, literally the surrender of Ukraine. This will not be a negotiated settlement. And the West is starting to come to grips with that. You see the panic in NATO right now as they realize that Russia has won this war. And it's not going to end well for NATO in terms of their ambitious endeavor to keep Russia down. The good news is all the ridiculous talk you hear out of the British generals and the Polish generals and the French generals, even now American generals, about Russia wanting to invade NATO. That's just ludicrous. It's stupid. It's ignorant as the day is long. But they need to be saying this and screaming this as people look at Ukraine and say, hey, we're losing. And they can't say, well, it's just a fake the whole time. It's just a proxy war. Don't worry about it. They now have to say, in order to preserve their political credibility, yes, those evil Russians are winning there, so now we need to build up our arsenals to be able to confront the Russians. I've never seen so much bellicose posturing by British officers in a long time. I mean, it's up there with the ridiculous posturing of the German officers and the Polish officers, three armies that simply can't fight today, especially the British Army, who, I mean, can barely fill up a soccer stadium with troops. And apparently, based upon what I've seen, no offense, George, but many of these troops are not battle fit. And yet the generals are out there just talking as if they're ready to go to war with Russia. It's not only embarrassing, but it's dangerous.
It is dangerous and slightly absurd, slightly Gilbert and Sullivan. It is a paper army. We have 74,000 in all three armed forces, by the way. But that includes hairdressers and clerks and medical staffs and probably diversity officers and all the rest of that paraphernalia. We probably couldn't field more than 40,000 people across three services that would be ready for action in a war against Russia with millions of men and 3 years battle hardened and with a military industrial complex that knocks everybody else together. Military industrial complex working like clockwork. No doubt the 40,000 that we have are skilled and brave officers and men. I'm not in any way seeking to disparage them, but they are being encouraged by their political masters to get into, a swinging dick contest with people with much, much larger dicks than them. And that's what's dangerous about it.
I'm sorry, George, that's just perfect. But yeah, I mean, this is basically, the beta cooks showing up at the porn star convention thinking they got what it takes. They don't. It's ridiculous. Just to show you the level of ridiculous. No, drone warfare is being redefined as we speak in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. The Russians now, they allowed an Italian journalist to go through their production facility in Tatarstan and outside of Kazan, where they're in the process of producing over 1,000 of these Shahed-style drones a day, 1,000 a day. They're already firing 400, 500, 600, 700 a day. There's talk that they're going to get it up to 2,000 a day. This is Russia in full swing. And when I say in full swing, understand that they're not really in full swing because the Russian economy is still very much dominated by civilian industry. The military has been mobilized to a certain extent, but this is not a wartime footing. But in this, mobilized state, they're outproducing the West in 3 months what the entire NATO produces in a year. Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, has come out with this ridiculous directive for drone dominance. He's directing that the United States will have drone dominance as if by saying this, it shall happen. And at the same time, the United States has unveiled its copy, literally a copy of the Shahed drone, the geranium that the Russians are mass producing, called Lucas. It's got one of those ridiculous American acronyms. But he's saying this proves that we're on par with the Russians. Lucas is still in the developmental stage. It hasn't achieved mass production. It never will achieve anything remotely resembling this because the Russians are producing something that costs $20,000 each. Lucas is going to cost close to $1 million, $1.5 million per copy. This shows you why we will never match the Russians because we can't do what the Russians do. And we're not even talking about the manpower right now. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Are the Russians supermen? Absolutely not. They bleed just like we do. When bullets hit them, they die, they get wounded, they cry out for mommy. They do the whole thing. War is as hell. But what the Russians have on us is that for 3 years they've learned how to kill. There's a great book written by a trilogy. Rick Atkinson wrote it about the U.S. Army in World War II. And when he gets to the end of the first book, An Army at Dawn, and he talks about getting ready to go into Sicily, he said the soldiers that were green at Kasserine Pass that the Germans beat, he said they had learned that the only way they're going to go home is through Berlin. and the only way they're going to get to Berlin is by killing Germans, and they became very good at killing Germans. The Russians right now are very good at killing Ukrainians, and they'll be very good at killing anybody who gets in front of them. NATO has no relevant combat experience, and the first engagement between Russian forces and NATO forces, if God forbid it ever happens, will end in an absolute disaster for the NATO forces, which is why people like General Christopher Donahue, the current commander of European forces, who just hosted in Wiesbaden a conference called, I think it's Euroland, it's about the future of war. He threatened to take out the Kaliningrad exclave. He said, we can do this instantly. No, Chris, you can't. If you even attack Kaliningrad, understand it doesn't exist in isolation. There's the rest of Russia out there with all of their missiles, like the Oreshnik. You will die screaming like a scared girl in your bunker when you realize the missiles are incoming and you have no air defense to protect you, and you made a grave mistake. Anybody who thinks that they could fight and defeat the Russians on the field of battle today is making a grave mistake. But moreover, we should never even be thinking about that. The Russians are not posturing themselves for war. They are posturing themselves for peace, to live in peace, to live in prosperity. Go to Russia, visit Russia. I know you were in Russia recently, and I know you know what I'm about to say is true. These are people who are in love with living life, and they're living a good, high-quality life. And all they ask is to be able to continue to live that life free of the interference of outside powers who have, for the past century and a half, wanted nothing more than to bring Russia down.
Amen to all that. Speaking of Russia, Scott, it turns out, although again you and I already knew this, but now the whole country knows it, that Russia was indeed a hoax. And moreover, it is a hoax that is entirely the responsibility of your former President Barack Obama, because it wasn't the intelligence community that said that Putin put Trump into the White House. In fact, they said the precise opposite. It was Obama and his henchmen and women who perpetrated a fraud, I say a coup against the idea of America, against the American Republic itself, exponentially bigger than January 6th, that farcical affair. The consequences of that could have been World War III, because if Russia had indeed interfered in your politics to the extent that they installed an agent of theirs in the White House, well, could scarcely get more serious than that. Do you think this has got legs? Is there any chance of prosecution?
The information that Tulsi Gabbard has brought forward is damning. I don't know if it's sufficient for an indictment, and I don't know if it's sufficient for a successful prosecution. On the surface, it should lead to, preparation for an indictment. But you have to also be careful of the fact that prosecution may be difficult because you have to prove things. And for instance, I think one of the most difficult hurdles they're going to have to overcome is what Brennan, the CIA director, did in bringing out a human source, a defector inside Russia, inside the presidential administration, who apparently was a double agent, and that the Russians were feeding information back just to play the United States and humiliate the United States, which they've succeeded in doing, by the way. Again, this is totally a self-inflicted wound. But I don't know if when you go to trial, this kind of information may not be able to be brought forward, because then you get into all the things the CIA never wants to talk about. And then other evidence that would be, condemning, will be protected by executive privilege and things like that. So I think Tulsi's playing a strong hand up front to create the public, to shape public perception about the criminal actions of Obama and his henchmen. But if it comes time to actually successfully prosecute, which I dream about, because I truly believe that no person is above the law, especially a president who betrays the trust and confidence of the American people by committing a legitimate act of treason, which is what Obama has done. I'd love to see them held accountable, but we're talking about three of the most high-placed deep state actors possible: Obama, Brennan, Comey, CIA, FBI, and the president. And it's going to be very hard to put forward a cognizable case that can actually succeed in prosecuting because of the classification of the information that is at stake here.
The public now know, though, that the entire first presidential term of Donald Trump was deliberately wrecked, imperiling the peace of the world, and that the British were up to their necks in it. We're not called perfidious Albion for nothing. The role of MI6 in all of these stories that we've discussed tonight, and others that we've discussed on other occasions, it seems to me we're to paraphrase Oscar Wilde, we're two countries united by a common deep state.
Yeah, George, this breaks my heart because, as you know, when I was United Nations weapons inspector, I worked very closely with the British government. There were periods of time where I would make weekly flights to London, the red eye, to just fly in the morning, have meetings in Whitehall, have meetings throughout London, and then fly home at night to be back in time to file paperwork at the end of the business day. Every time I went to Iraq, I traveled through London, and every time I returned from Iraq, I traveled through London because I had a close, intimate relationship with the British government, with the British intelligence community, and I had deep respect for the professionals that I worked with. But that England no longer exists. And in the England that I believed in was you, George. You hosted me in Parliament. You showed me Parliament. You walked side by side with me, in a million-man march that went to Hyde Park where we spoke out against the war. You showed me that the British people are capable of having a heart and doing the right thing. And that's the England, the United Kingdom, the Great Britain that I fell in love with, but it no longer exists. I'm not saying you don't exist. Clearly you do. But your government is not the friend of the United States, not by any stretch of the imagination. And we're at a point right now in American-British relations where we need to be calling a spade a spade. You are not our friend. In fact, you are our enemy. You facilitated active treason against the sitting president of the United States. Under some circumstances, that would be a casus belli, which means we have every right to blow you off the face of the earth. And you're lucky I'm not the president, because I'll tell you what, you interfere with American democracy to that degree, you will pay a heavy price, as you should. Not you, George. You're my friend, and not the British people, and that's why we'll never do this. But your government is the absolute enemy of not just the United States, but all of humanity. The thing it's a shame to say, because you're the birthplace of the Magna Carta. You're the birthplace of some of the the greatest intellectual minds about democracy and human rights. And what you've become, what your nation has become under its current leadership, is an embarrassment not just to England, but to all of mankind.
Wow, that's all I can say to that. Scott Ritter, a big thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Let me take a quick break to recover from the power of that invective, and then it's your calls right up to Gayatri's social media roundup. Stay tuned. Big thanks to this week's top donors who visited the new MOATS.tv website. Thank you very much, all of you. And I'm really going to make this point as firmly as I can. Every one of you has to go to MOATS.tv and donate something, even if it is £1, even if it is $1, €1. Nothing comes for free. 2 shows a week cannot be produced for free. We need every person watching to donate at least £1, $1, €1. I can't put it more clearly than that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
We've got back on the line Gary in Scotland, who was cut off just as he was getting very interesting indeed, but he's back. Gary, start at the beginning if you will. Hello? Gary? Something's definitely up. Okay. Let me go on to Canada then. Hazy is in Canada on Epstein and Trump. Hazy, welcome to the show.
Hey, George, how are you today? Thank you so much for everything you do.
Oh, good.
You're the voice of the voiceless. I appreciate the show. I have a notification every week or so. It comes up on my phone. Says you're live. Good, and when it comes to Epstein, you touched a lot of good points. And there was some rumors that Epstein might be alive, because that 3 minutes of missing footage, who knows? They took him out. They just they don't want to kill their good man, and he might be just alive right there. And when you were talking about Donald Trump, I just put up some points in here together. Donald was not behaving well. He was not controlling his speech, and he was going loose online. And they slapped him in the back of the hand, and they brought him back in here. Now he's acting like a slave, pushing chairs for Mr. Bibi. There's nothing that we can trust these days. I mean,
well, nothing lasts forever, of course, Hazy. Netanyahu's not going to last forever. In fact, if this food poisoning takes its course, he might not last the week. He's off work for 3 days. I don't know if that will mean less or more blood everywhere else, but he's not going to last forever, and Trump's not going to last forever. In fact, looking at those elephantine ankles of his, I last saw ankles like that with sitting on the front bench, a man called Edward Heath, the former Prime Minister of Britain, in his 30 or 40 year sulk after Mrs. Thatcher defenestrated him. I used to sit right opposite him and always marvelled at his ankles. And lo and behold, Donald Trump's developed the same ankles. And he had bone spurs as a youth, of course, which meant he couldn't fight in Vietnam, although he would have liked to, I have no doubt. So nothing lasts forever, including Epstein. Now, it's perfectly possible that Epstein is still alive, but it would have been a bigger operation to whisk him out of the prison and transport him presumably to Israel, which is filled with such fugitives as Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, the only criminal they didn't accept from the United States was Mayor Lansky of the mafia, and only then because they were under pressure from the United States government on certain defense and economic matters. And then Mayor Lansky showed up back in Miami only to be shot. At least that's the Godfather version of events. So he could be in Israel. He could be still alive. There are gigantic and very suspicious movements of monies through his American Virgin Islands bank account. I'm not sure how anyone could properly explain those transactions of hundreds of millions of dollars in and out in the years since he committed suicide. But it's most likely that he was whacked. The least likely is that he committed suicide. In fact, I'd go so far to say is that it is impossible that he committed suicide. And he certainly would have been a complete fool to do so, because according to Donald Trump, there is no Epstein affair. Ghislaine Maxwell's in jail for nothing, and Epstein offed himself for no reason. But I think overwhelmingly that, although that balance is shifting, that he was whacked to make sure he didn't make any deals with anybody and reveal any secrets. The same thing has happened to his one-time, more or less, common law father-in-law, Rupert Maxwell, who equally was almost certainly whacked off the back of his boat, and for the same reason. But is Epstein alive? Well, Eichmann was still alive and living as somebody else in Argentina. I just watched the movie again last night. Epstein may very well still be alive. And if he is still alive, there's no doubt in my mind that he's in Israel. But there would have to be a proactive reason. There would have to be still some utility in Jeffrey Epstein for the Israelis to have done that. That may be the case. I don't know. So I think it's highly likely that he was murdered, but it's by no means impossible that he was escaped in that 2 minutes and 53 seconds that the cameras inexplicably weren't working. Thanks for that, Hazy. Now, did you know that we have a podcast? Most of you do, I think, but you can download it each week by scanning the QR code on your screen now. This week, we're in the top 10 in Bulgaria. Go figure. And a big, big thanks to all our friends in Bulgaria. We're in the top 10 in Singapore, but also in Egypt this week. That's the first time for a long time. We're in the top 30 for politics in Russia and Mexico. Once you've listened, please don't forget to leave a review and rate it also. It helps to grow the podcast and more people will know about the show. For the third time lucky, it's Gary in Scotland on Palestine. Go ahead, Gary.
Hi, George. Apologies about that. As I was saying earlier, I think it's been really the final act of a 70-year plan. The plan from day one, from the day that the State of Israel was established, has been the removal of every Palestinian in the Holy Land. That's been the plan from day one. I've been twice to the Holy Land. I've been to the West Bank twice. I've seen the treatment of the people in Palestine by the IDF. I had a lovely meal in the Banks' walled-off hotel in Bethlehem, where you pay extra for a room with a view of the wall. I've seen the treatment of these people. Yeah. I've been to Damascus Gate on a Friday. I've seen how they're treated. They're treated with utter, total contempt. And I think, unfortunately, the two-state solution is dead. It doesn't exist any longer. Gaza is a wasteland, and there's 750,000 settlers in the West Bank, increasing every year by thousands more. So Starmer and Macron and Trump can salve their liberal consciences about two-state solution and blah, blah, blah. That died the same day as Yitzhak Rabin. That died 30 years ago. And there's not a politician in Israel who will agree to a two-state solution. I think, sadly and horrifically, it's over for the Palestinian people. And it's shame on the British, shame on the Americans, the French. They wring their hands, say how terrible it is, and do absolutely nothing. They stand back and watch a genocide in real time. It's beyond disgusting.
Yeah, and it's beyond forgiveness. It will burn in my heart and yours, I think, until the day we die, the minute that we die. And I hope that our children will pick up that torch and never drop it, and their children after them. It will never be forgiven. It can never be forgotten. And as long as there's a single Palestinian left alive, the cause will remain. And if there's two of them, men and women, then the Palestinian people will never die. So I'm in despair, yes, I'm in rage, yes, but I have not given up. And one thing's for sure, the Palestinian people will never give up. So unless they succeed in literally annihilating every last Palestinian alive on earth, this issue is never going to go away. But I have myself stood and passed oftentimes through the Damascus Gate, emerging from Salahuddin Street, from the Philadelphia restaurant on a Friday, in through the Damascus Gate, into the old city of Jerusalem, on my way to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, to kiss the stone on which Jesus was anointed upon his crucifixion, continuing up that green hill, far away to the holy places of Jerusalem. This is a part of me, and it's a part of you. And it is a part of the Roman Catholic Church. It ought to be a part of all Christendom. It is a part of all the Muslim Ummah. This issue will never die, and it is not going to be resolved by Israel. Just as a surgeon cannot operate on his own foot, but has to have someone else conduct the operation on his own foot, so this matter will have to be altered by the actions of others outside. The resistance of the Palestinian people can be counted on. That will never stop. That's the anvil. But the hammer has to come from outside. And as long as anyone is still shilling for, bankrolling, arming, and protecting this genocidal state, we have work to do. We have to work to produce governments in Western countries that withdraw entirely all of their support for this thing that they call Israel. That seems like a long way away, Gary, but it's not nearly as long away as it was this time last year or the year before that, or any of the 50 years that I've been involved in this cause. Thanks for the call. Third time lucky, as I said. A big shout out to tonight's top donors who've been on to the MOATS.tv website since we came on air. Seren Moller, I think it's Moller. Seren Moller, Kenneth Morris, Lee Armstrong, Diana Saleh, and a huge thank you to Artem Smetanin, whose recurring donations, and you can do that, his recurring donations since April of 2022 have been very significant indeed. Imagine that, a recurring donation from April 2022 until now makes him our biggest ever donor, and I'm very grateful to him for that. Let's go back to Canada, where Harjot wants to talk about Epstein. Harjot, welcome. Go ahead.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Galloway. How are you doing today?
All good. Thanks for calling. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I'd actually like to talk a bit about the New World Order, but in the sense as like the revised version that I had. But before I get into that, I'd like to mention a valuable life lesson I've learned through the experiences of my grandfather and through the stories that he shared over the years. So, being born in 1912... Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so being born in 1912, he's lived a very long and fruitful life going into the year 2019. So, being 107, you can only imagine the experiences one lived through.
Sure.
And through all those life lessons that I've learned, there was one that made a huge impact on both myself and onto him. So later in his years, when he was about 105, 106, he was really reliving his times in India and stuff, right? And during those times, the one moment that I wouldn't say he regrets the most, but the one moment that had the biggest impact was the British partition. And I say the British partition in the sense as he had his best friend, his best Muslim friend that he's lived with for 30-odd years. They were just cherished good friends. But due to the war, they decided to use religion in a way to divide borders between two parts of Punjab. And being 105, 106, looking back on that, the biggest impact that it had on him was not being able to see his best friend due to religions that they both had, difference in religions and stuff, right? But getting back on the Epstein side of things, and I'll bring this back into the aspect, but in regards to the Epstein side of things, I believe that we're never going to see the list because in its own way, the list itself is a cash cow for Israel's profits. And I feel like Congress themselves, when we say we got to drain the swamp, we got to look at the Congress members. We got to look at the 435 members that are up for election this coming 2026 and the 35 Senate seats that are up for election. I think we got to start this from America, and we got to start it from the roots in the sense of Congress. We need to look past religions. We need to look past cultures. We need to look at humanity in its own and unite in that sense. Like the brave Mexican firefighters that cross borders to help those in need. The next election, I say we choose humanity over politicians and let the shackles rain upon those that bound them. Thank you.
Amen to that. Thank you, Harjit, and God rest the soul of your esteemed grandfather. There's a legend on the line. That legend is Donna in Panama on the U.S. Empire. Donna, welcome back. Wonderful to hear from you again.
Great talking with you. I promise the public and you, nobody is going to pay me to say this, but I was just thinking, if you have a date and you and your date, whether it's a spouse, a friend, a child, go to the movies, right, twice a month, right, you're going to spend what? If you get popcorn and a drink and go to the movies with someone, you're going to spend at least $40, right, $45. So really, if you go to the movies twice a month, right, you spend $80. So everybody really should be giving the show at least $80 a month. That's my commercial. Nobody's paying me to say that. I'm just saying. Okay. Anyway, now back to the Empire. So you're welcome. Hey, help me out, folks. Anyway, what I was going to say is that my dear friend, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, formerly right under Colin Powell, and experienced, served in Vietnam, a professor at the College of William and Mary. He's now my dear friend. He's a member of the Quincy Institute, and he is a brilliant person and a very strong supporter of Palestine and appalled at the military-industrial complex and the war economy. Now, I could tell you, I could paraphrase what he said, but I want to tell you that he switched from being a Israel lobby directs our foreign policy guy to the Walton Mearsheimer, the Israel lobby, influence. He said, yes, the Israel lobby controls Congress, no doubt about it. However, he believes that the American empire plus its proxies or client states, Israel and the UK, they want hegemony. They want hegemony in Ukraine, in the East, in the Middle East, and that is what is driving our foreign policy. Now, let me read to you the exact words from Colonel Wilkerson. He says, the reality of the overarching imperial theory is George H.W. Bush, you see, was adamantly opposed to the empires taking advantage of the Cold War's end to reinforce, indeed intensify, the empire's hegemony. This was especially true with respect to Russia and to China. Healthy strategic competition was his answer, as well as for Russia, incorporation into a European security architecture. His quote-unquote new world order was to be based on a newly energized and powerful United Nations. Why he insisted on the UN approval for the first Iraq war, fully backed by the U.S., Russia, and China. This was anathema to the neocons and their supporters, and thus doubly so to Israel. And he also adds, many of the U.S.-based neocons are Jewish billionaires. And then he says it was particularly anathema to Sharon and Netanyahu.
Well, the older I get, Donna, the more I can view differently people like Bush the Elder, and for that matter, Richard Nixon, both of whom I loathed and despised with every fiber of my being at the time, and probably until now. But when I see what came after them, when I see the stance, or Eisenhower, who halted the attack on Egypt in the so-called Suez Affair of 1956, which came to an end with the President of the United States, Eisenhower, ordering London, Paris, and Tel Aviv to cease and desist immediately. When I think back to the promises that were made by James Baker, the Secretary of State of George Bush Sr., not to advance NATO by 1 inch to the east, and when I see what his successors then did, I'm left having to reevaluate, not in any sense the greatness of George Bush Sr., but the total venality of those who came after him. A wonderful call from one legend, Donna in Panama, and I saw pop up on my screen, which is why I halted, another legend on the line. But let's see if he comes back on. Meanwhile, I'll read some comments. Stan says, as part of the Abraham Accords, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar had to invest heavily in Israel. And Bill Scott says, the mother of all monologues, couldn't be more with you on this. The world has blood on its hands. We need more direct action against our so-called leaders, not one amongst them. Pure evil. And Eric Lassin says, the US uses Israel as a proxy, not the other way around. People are so lost in conspiracy theories. Yes, Eric, a point I have made, I hope powerfully myself. Michael Bartlett says the USA should replace the 5 pointed stars on the American flag with the Israeli star. That would be a better representation of what America has become over the last 75 years. And Maureen McGahan says, George, you're doing all you can to help those poor people of Gaza, but please look after your health. This world is sick. The so-called leaders are scumbags standing back, allowing this genocide. Thank you, my dear Maureen. And that legend is back. It's Tommy in Glasgow on Palestine. I hope it's special, as it usually is. Tommy, on you go.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother. How are you doing?
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Very nice to hear you. Tell me, what can I do for you tonight?
Yes, I think there should be a religious edict, a fatwa given for this show, that anyone who comes on out of respect for your good self, should say, Salam alaikum, peace be upon you, brother. Because you're a brother to us all, and we should be invoking peace upon you. So for anyone out there who's listening who comes on later on, or the next week or two, Salam alaikum to this man here. George, every time I laugh when you say like swinging dick contest, I think of the time back when I was a kid in the schoolyard and they used to say, if you get a BHI, and it was whether one or two ways. So, you know, the BHI of Putin, he's a big hairy invader. And then you've got the BHI of the starmer Führer, the baldy half-incher. And, you know, people who are not over-endowed, sometimes they're blessed with a tongue. But he can't speak 5 minutes without looking at notes, the starmer Führer. So these paedophile protectors, you know, as Starmer was for Savile, that, you know, the fact that they speak out and say, oh, we stand against Israel and should stop this and we shouldn't do that. But at the same time, they're still arming and financing and backing them. Like you said earlier on, you're better having someone that you know is an absolute devil and someone who tries to kid on that they're not. And that's what these Labour people are. They turn around, George, and you think that they are something, you know, that, oh, we are going to do this. They're doing nothing. You know, look what's happening in Palestine right now. You know, you can't say, the only time I've took action and stood with a group was on the 29th of February when I drove down to Rochdale to stand and support you, brother, last year. I've not joined any group because any group that wants me, I would have to resign immediately because I wouldn't want to be a part of it. So I'm just putting this in record. I'm not part of Palestine action. I'm all for Islamic action. I'm all for Christian action. I'm all for humanity action. That every day I humble myself and put myself on the ground and asked for thanks and forgiveness from my Creator and everything that He gives us, you know, from the food, from the water. We do nothing. We're arrogant people. The Christians used to say thanks after they eat the food. Now they don't do it. You know, we should all give thanks for having been blessed by having food in our bellies. And going on to the starving Palestinian brothers and sisters, that in this stage of famine, the 5th degree of starvation, where food will not even save them, where the death count is 2 out of 1,000. Let's do some maths, George. It's been just over a month, I think 5 weeks, 35 days since I was last on. If it's another 35 days, let's look at the numbers that are going to die. That even if we start putting food on, that we're not going to save these people, but it's the other people who are waiting to be included in that group, that 2 out of 1,000 will die daily. These numbers, that's 100,000, that's 200 a day. Times it by 1 million, that's 2,000 a day. Now, they say there's over 2 million there. They say there's over 50,000 dead. But there was a number I heard that over 400,000 people have been slaughtered that are lying in the rubble that these pig Nazis are bulldozing. That, you know, that this is the final solution that one of the brothers that was on earlier on from down the borders was saying this is the plan that they had from day one. Not day one, the 8th of October, from day one from 1948, from day one from the Balfour Declaration, from when these Zionist Nazi pigs decided that they were going to take over this land. That this was the final solution to take out all the people, the indigenous people that are there, the Semitic people who are there. The Palestinians are the Semitic. These people are anti-Semitic. These are the true anti-Semitic people, these Zionist Nazi pigs. And this final solution, that if I'm back on in another month's time, 140,000 people will die of starvation. This is on our heads. The people, what are we doing? What are we doing here? We're not doing enough. But the fact is, you know, George, that I'm making dawah to people out there. If you're a Muslim, you're not doing your 5 a day, you need to look in your mirror and say, why not? I'm saying to the people who are not Muslim, look at the Palestinian people there who are Muslim, when they can say, Alhamdulillah, all praises for God. And they are indeed the privileged ones, because look at the brother who self-immolated himself because he couldn't bear to sit. It's been over a year since he died, I think, and he couldn't bear to sit and have in his conscience where every day we have to have in our conscience, we will be forced to go in front of our Creator when we die. What do we do? What do we say? Stand up. It's not about Palestine action, it's about humanity action. Stand with our brothers. I'm making dawah for people. Read the story of the Prophet ﷺ by Martin Lings and be there. Take humanity action for your brothers and your sisters there who have been starved. And those are truly, it's desperate times when they are the most blessed ones, because if they're the ones that are going to be dying, they're going to be martyrs, they're shaheeds, and they're getting something that is blessed. They're getting out of this place. They're never going to get the peace in this land. God bless them all. God bless us, and God help us all, that we can't do any more than just pray, make dua, and ask for forgiveness. Ask for forgiveness from your Creator, because we will all be judged, George. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you.
Ameen. Ameen. Very powerful, as always, from one legend. For the last call to Erebos in New York. But first, I've got Gayatri in another studio for the social media roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri? Good to see you. Well, you're looking marvelous. Wish I was there.
Thank you. Well, following on to Tommy's call on our actions for Palestine, Palestine action, Islam action, or whatever you call it, we do what we can do, whatever the consequences. And the consequences have been very dire. As we all know, Palestine Action in the UK has been labeled and subscribed as a terrorist group, and therefore you can be arrested and imprisoned for subscribing and promoting this group, which is pro-Palestine, and makes it clear in their action. It goes even further. I read earlier the report from Klarenberg that some of these pro-Palestine groups have had their bank accounts frozen. I mean, these are some of the prices people have to pay for supporting Palestine, for being against genocide. It is really crazy as it is.
Unbelievable. Go on.
Well, I just wanted to continue with an email from Alan in Wigan. He says, George, your monologue tonight was memorable, to say the least. Our politician should be made to watch it every second. Another connection to Tommy's call, it's like a fatwa. You must watch it, every politician. I see they're all going on their summer holidays, and I would say to anyone, if you spot any of these charlatans lounging around on a beach or having a drink at the beachside bar, hound them, harangue them, call them out for their complicity of the killing fields in Gaza. Make their lives hell. In the way that we have seen on social media that Israelis, young Israelis, and therefore of age to be part of the Israeli defense army, that they are being hounded out of the cafes on the beach sides in all kinds of countries, from Greece to Thailand. So that's the call from Alan. I would like to continue on the poll whether the Epstein affair will bring down Trump. True Catholic says it's a clear no from me. The acid test was the Marjorie Taylor Greene's proposal to cut the defense aid to Israel by $500 million, which she lost by 6 to 422. So how can anyone bring him down when all of those 422 who can do that are possibly on the Epstein list? And Gary Master says,
well, thousands, go ahead.
Gary Masters says all roads lead to Mossad and Israel, which means as long as Trump and the administration continues to behave and do Israel's bidding, the affair will be swept under the carpet. If it gets too hot, they will simply escalate one or more of their various wars. What did you want to say?
Yeah. No, I was just going to make the point. This time difference between us makes conversation very difficult, of course, on television. But I think that the Epstein affair will not go away because Ghislaine Maxwell remains alive and falsely imprisoned. If Donald Trump is telling the truth, then she is being falsely imprisoned. They cannot possibly survive another prison suicide, this time by Ghislaine Maxwell. So she will find a way and her family will find a way of keeping alive an issue for which she's serving 20 years in prison. There are all these victims, thousands of these victims, some of whom have been paid with non-disclosure agreements attached, some of whom have been bought or silenced. But the number of whistleblowers that are out there and the zeal of, even if it's twisted zeal, of the Murdoch papers, for example, the Wall Street Journal. I think the Wall Street Journal has got receipts for Donald Trump's relationship to this whole affair, and that's the relationship which has forced him to now try to persuade us that actually there is no affair. There is no Epstein list, and it was all a hoax got up by Hillary Clinton and co. I don't believe that's going to wash. And the numbers come November 26 may very well radically alter. It may very well be that Trump will lose his majority in the House and in the Senate. And that will be the beginning of the end of his dynasty, of the Trump movement, the MAGA movement. So the stakes are very, very high. So he is casting around for diversions. Undoubtedly, the Obama papers, Tulsi Gabbard's revelations, are part of these diversions. But that doesn't mean they are not in themselves important. It doesn't mean that if you oppose Trump on Epstein, you should oppose Trump on Obama. It's possible to chew gum and walk in a straight line at the same time. Last word to you, Gayatri.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just going to read this one from Michael Scott because you mentioned it earlier. Hello, George. Your show is making Donald Trump take the fall for all the misbehavior in the Epstein files. What about all the others in the House? It's obvious now that Trump is being lined up to take the blame for the whole thing. We should ask what pressures are on him to take it down. What pressures are on, before mentioned, Rupert Murdoch, to close it down or to blame it all on Trump alone. So, yeah.
Well, for your correspondent to say that means they haven't been following us on the Epstein affair. I was not blaming Trump for the Epstein affair until Trump tried to tell me there was no Epstein affair. When Trump was not telling me there was no Epstein affair, my focus was wide and varied and on everybody but Donald Trump. It's only the 11th hour conversion of Donald Trump into the lie that there never was an Epstein affair, it was all a hoax. That's what's got me talking about Donald Trump and Epstein, and for the obvious reason. There is only one logical explanation for Trump's abandoning the pursuit of justice for the victims of Epstein, and that is that he has belatedly learned that he's got much more to lose than we thought. Gayatri, I can't take you for chips tonight, I'm afraid, because we're far distant, but it was great to see you on the screen. I have to take a call because I can never refuse a call from legends. Erobos in New York is one of those. Erobos, welcome. You're the last caller.
Salutations and salubrious greetings, Mr. G. More power to you, Clan Galloway, the magnificent Gayatri Galloway, Mrs. in her First Lady Prime Ministership attire, the wonderful Jaya, the MOATS staff, and the MOATS family. I'll just state that my homeless situation has calmed down quite a lot. I have regular internet service, and I've even been featured on Press TV as a test case. So if you wanted to move forward with the aforestated plan, please do so. I've sent you an
Well, I
email
will,
about
and
that.
let me,
Yes.
okay, I haven't seen it yet, but let me explain it. I felt that the show would benefit from regular and short, but regular update on U.S. news from Erobos in New York. I think his political focus and the wonderful way in which he expresses himself, that wonderful voice, which I'm going to feature on the show in a singing section at one point, is such that I asked Erobos, as a legend, if he would provide a regular slot for us, and he agreed to do so, but that the housing situation he was in and the internet situation he was in made it difficult. Well, now we know that that has been resolved. We will proceed apace with that. So look out for a regular Erobos slot. Last word to you, Erobos.
Yes, I will press on. As in my favorite film, The Matrix, Morpheus said to Neo, time is always against us. In a July 5th Middle East eye, it is stated here in this article, efforts to valorize BRICS as posing weighty opposition to Western hegemony distract from the fact that every BRICS nation besides Iran was economically benefiting from Israel's military-industrial complex. Patrick Bond says that while there was a global call for an arms embargo and a halt to economic trade with Israel, Brazilian, Russian, and South African companies were still exporting energy to Israel, while DJI, the Chinese state-owned company, was still selling drones to the Israeli military. Moreover, Chinese and Indian companies were involved in the functioning of Israeli ports where weapons and resources were being received. What goes up must come down, right? I think this is going to haunt these countries. You know, they're not always going to be on top riding. I understand they make a cold economic calculus and they just leave Palestine to die, but that's a legacy that's going to haunt them. I don't think they're going to live it down, and I'm doing my part to put them on blast about that. Because if they can do that to Palestine, ignore them like that, so they can have, because just last 2 weeks ago, China became the most preferred economic partner in the world. This is what it's about for them. If they can do that to Palestine, they could do it to anyone else.
Wow, powerful end to the show from a real legend, Erobos, from whom you're going to be hearing more on a regular basis on the mother of all talk shows. I don't know about you, but I thought this was an exceptional edition. I think it's the 465th, though I may have that slightly wrong. But of all the episodes that we've had, this has been one of the most powerful. It helps that the events in the world are of such dramatic and dangerous nature that the words just come to me. As you know, I don't write anything that I say. I don't know what I'm going to say until I say it. And sometimes God gives you wings and sometimes not. Tonight I felt that God gave me wings, and I'm hoping that you felt the same. The interview with Scott Ritter was of enormous significance, I believe, and will be studied by generations in schools, in colleges, in universities, I hope, at least. And the usual aplomb, style, dash, and rapier-like wit of Afshin Rattansi, made it all together with the calls from so many legends and so many countries tonight, the show that it has been. It's been one for the ages. If God wills it, I'll be back here again on Wednesday for the mother of all talk shows. I don't know who the guests are yet. I don't know what the issues will be yet, but I have a pretty good guess that we'll not be seeing very much good news anywhere in the world. But even when the news is bad, it's important that the news you get is the truth. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.